Chapter 99 begins with Hae-in collapsing to her knees, covering her nose due to the overwhelming dark energy emanating from the ant before them. In her mind, she can hardly believe such a menacing energy exists. Fear is clearly visible on her face. She realizes that the creature before them is no ordinary beast. Even the sound of its footsteps sends shivers down their spines. Dong-wook, realizing there is no time to waste, thinks they must defeat the beast quickly. As the ant moves, it casually walks past Dong-wook, but as it gets closer, he can feel an intense fear washing over him, as though his bones were being crushed. The ant heads straight toward the queen and stands before her, observing the dead creature. As the hunters stare at it, they suddenly feel an overwhelming sense of dread in their chests. The ant opens its claws and releases a terrifying roar. The force of the roar creates a shockwave, causing the hunters to collapse to their knees under the pressure of its energy. A dark red aura surrounds the ant, and its gaze focuses on Hae-in, who can barely stand under the intensity of the creature's presence. In the next moment, the ant appears behind Hae-in, catching her completely off guard. She can barely move before it delivers a powerful punch to her side. The impact is so strong that she coughs up blood, and she crashes into the tunnel wall from the force. Seeing this, Dong-wook screams Hae-in's name, but before he can react, the ant is already standing before him. With a single punch, it shatters Dong-wook's shield. Dong-wook tries to strike the creature with his sword, but the ant easily grabs him and slices through his arm. Blood splatters as the ant's claws cut deep into him. In a flash, the ant turns its attention to Yunho and slashes him with a swift blow that incapacitates him as well. Jong-in tries to cast a spell, but before he can finish, the ant slashes him across his body, defeating him instantly. Meanwhile, Tae-gyu, from a distance, launches magic arrows, believing he has a clear shot. He is confident that he won't miss this time. However, to his shock, the ant effortlessly grabs his arrow in mid-flight. The ant then crushes the arrow with its claw. In a split second, it delivers a crushing punch to Tae-gyu, sending him flying. Dong-wook, still recovering from the ant's earlier attack, manages to launch an attack at the creature, causing it to retreat. Dong-wook says that his arm may have been cut off, but he has Byung-gu by his side, as it becomes clear that Dong-wook's arm has fully healed. Meanwhile, Byung-gu uses a skill called disguise, a self-defense technique similar to camouflage, which conceals all traces of his presence. In Byung-gu's mind, the only downside is that the user cannot move, but it's still a handy skill to have as a healer. Even though the ant wants to finish him off, it cannot locate him. He also thinks that as long as he's there to heal his teammates, they won't be easily defeated. Dong-wook lunged with a punch, but the ant easily evaded the blow. It then seized Dong-wook's foot and swung him around multiple times like a ragdoll. Dong-wook struggled, his body bruised and battered. From a concealed location, Byung-gu, employing his disguise skill, healed Dong-wook. Despite this intervention, the ant's gaze suddenly shifted towards Byung-gu. A wave of fear washed over the healer, but he reassured himself that his disguise was still active, and the ant couldn't possibly know his location. Yet, the creature remained focused on him. Just then, Yunho cried out Byung-gu's name, knowing the ant had already located his position and that he was in danger. Byung-gu looked up, just in time to feel something pierce his back. The ant's claw had impaled him. His grip on the book he was holding loosened, and he stared, stunned, as the claw tore through his body. Yunho, helpless, can only watch in horror as Byung-gu falls. He too is unable to move, trapped by the immense fear and power of the beast before them. Chapter 100 opened with the ant stabbing Byung-gu. The scene showed the ant behind him as Byung-gu called out for Yunho. Then, he uttered a single, desperate word, "Run." As Yunho stared at Byung-gu, a horrific event unfolded. The ant devoured Byung-gu's head right before their very eyes. The other hunters watched in stunned horror. Consumed by rage, Yunho attacked the ant, but the ant easily stopped him, grabbing his neck and lifting him effortlessly. As Yunho hung in the air, struggling against the ant's grip, he heard a voice telling him to run. Looking at the ant's face, he heard Byung-gu's voice repeating the same warning. Yunho could only call the ant a bastard. Suddenly, the ant spoke. It revealed that the hunters were all weak. It acknowledged that their queen had been defeated, but added that killing all the soldiers on their side was not enough. As it spoke, memories of Yunho and Byung-gu flashed before the hunter's eyes. It is explained that by consuming its prey, it not only gained their life, but also absorbed their strength and knowledge. After this, the beast asked who their king was. As Yunho hung helplessly, struggling to breathe as the ant choked him, he had no idea what the ant meant by king. The ant then revealed that Hae-in had also been defeated and that Jong-in was injured. Meanwhile, the cameraman, paralyzed by fear, could barely stand. Suddenly, the ant paused and turned its attention to the outside of the tunnel. It said that it felt a strong presence coming from outside and, in an instant, flew toward the exit, releasing its grip on Yunho. The impact left Yunho in a nearly critical state. Yunho, still gasping for breath, thought to himself that the strong presence outside must be Goto Ryuji. He then realized they had no time to sit and wait. They needed to leave immediately before the ant returned. His thoughts were interrupted as he was taken aback by the sight of countless ants approaching them. The scene shifted outside the tunnel, where Goto Ryuji, along with Ishida and Hoshino, were heading towards the location of their other team members. Ishida remarked that something wasn't right, as they had lost contact with Team Charlie, and now it seemed they had also lost contact with Team Delta. Ryuji responded, suggesting that there might be a signal problem, but assured them they should still be within range. Afterward, Ryuji contacted Team Bravo. Tawada answered, stating, "Bravo here, alive and well, over." Ryuji inquired whether they had also lost contact with Team Delta and Charlie. Tawada confirmed that they had, and the only communication they were receiving was from Team Alpha. Tawada then asked if they wanted them to check on their teams. Ryuji replied that they were already on it and just needed to finish their task at the rendezvous point. Tawada acknowledged, saying, "Roger that." Suddenly, Ryuji received a call. He asked if there was something he had missed reporting. A man's voice came through the phone, saying, "Goto, it's me." Ryuji recognized the voice and responded, "Hello, Mr. Matsumoto." The scene then shifted to a ship near China, where a crew member and the captain were having a conversation. The crew member mentioned that it seemed South Korea had taken on a daring mission. He added that he still doubted the ants would fly all the way to China. The captain responded, saying that the Japanese were eagerly helping the South Koreans, which meant Goto Ryuji was desperately trying to become a national hunter. The crew member agreed, noting that all national-level hunters had cleared an S-rank gate before, and despite Ryuji's impressive record, he had yet to clear one himself. The captain then spoke, almost to himself, "I wonder." The crew member asked what he meant, but the captain didn't continue. Instead, he said, "Oh, nothing. It just seems like the perfect excuse." He then added that Goto Ryuji still had a long way to go, as he put on his cap. The crew member asked if that was his opinion, to which the captain replied, "If you had seen Liu Jigang in action, you'd understand what I mean." The crew member chuckled and said, "After just one encounter watching Liu Jigang, you're already a fan, huh?" The captain replied, "Pretty much." He then added, "In any case, I have a feeling that this raid will spell doom for one of the two countries." The scene shifted back to Team Alpha, where Goto Ryuji and his team had arrived at the location of Team Delta and Charlie. Ryuji was taken aback by what he saw. Only the lifeless bodies of their fellow Japanese hunters remained. They were all dead. Ryuji was speechless, and the person on the phone, Mr. Matsumoto, asked what had happened, but Ryuji couldn't find the words to reply. Ishida and Hoshino's faces reflected the disbelief they felt, unable to accept the grim reality of their fallen comrades. After a moment, Ryuji spoke up, answering Mr. Matsumoto. He told him that some of their hunters had been found dead. Mr. Matsumoto replied, "Then it seems they suffered unnecessary losses. Didn't we purposefully choose to fight the mutant ants to avoid a situation like this?" "That's correct," Ryuji responded. He added, "There's no need to worry. It just means that these hunters were weak." Mr. Matsumoto's voice responded, cold and harsh as always. "Well, as long as you're around, losing a few others isn't a big deal." Ryuji responded simply, "Indeed." Mr. Matsumoto asked, "Is South Korea currently facing off with the Queen?" Ryuji answered, "Yes, sir. A few moments ago, there was a signal jamming issue, and the ants have returned to the Queen's location." I'm concerned there might be another shift in events, but as of now, things seem under control. Mr. Matsumoto then asked, do you think the South Korean team will make it out alive? What are their chances of survival? Before answering, Ryuji thought briefly of Jinwoo, who had not joined the raid. He then replied, based on my experience with South Korean hunters, their current raid team has 0% chance of survival. Mr. Matsumoto responded with, good, before adding, the Japanese hunters did their best to ensure the Jeju Island raid was a success, but unfortunately, they were forced to retreat when all the South Korean hunters were defeated. Goto's attempt to become a national-level hunter was tragically foiled. He smirked, saying, I'm sure the press will eat this up. At least our ultimate goal was achieved, the annihilation of South Korea's S-ranks. Mr. Matsumoto then told Ryuji, pull out of there. Ryuji responded, understood. He instructed his team to pull out as well, and his two companions agreed. They decided to return to the bodies later. Before Ryuji could say anything else, a sudden attack jolted them, resulting in Ishida's head being sliced off. Ryuji narrowly blocked the incoming attack with his sword. Hoshino screamed Ishida's name in shock as she witnessed the brutal attack. Ryuji, now resolute, told Hoshino, I'll handle this. He thought to himself that they weren't facing ordinary ants. He quickly ordered Hoshino, get to Bravo team. Hurry. Hoshino hesitated, replying, but Ryuji cut her off, saying, if this is a strong beast, you'll only get in the way. A powerful aura began to emanate from Ryuji. This ant has quite a threatening presence, he said. The ant looked at Ryuji and asked, are you the king? It stood tall, holding Ishida's head in its grip. A dark red aura surrounded it. Ryuji was taken aback. He had never encountered an ant that could speak. With a smirk, he responded, is that your question? Why? Yes, I am the king, and raised his sword. A powerful aura radiated from him as he prepared to face the ant. Without warning, the ant opened its claws, letting out a deafening roar. Ryuji was stunned and confused, wondering why the ant wielded such powerful magic. He recalled a similar feeling from once before, and the face of Jinwoo flashed in his mind. Just then, his sword snapped, and the severed head fell to the ground. In an instant, even the strongest hunter in Japan had been defeated. The scene shifted to the tunnel, where the South Korean S-rank hunters were surrounded by a horde of ants. The only thing protecting them now was Jong-in's fire magic. They were backed into a corner, heavily injured from the relentless assault of the ants. Yoonho asked Jong-in if he could increase the intensity of his fire. Jong-in replied, if I do that, it will burn up every last bit of oxygen in this place. Yoonho thought to himself that they had all sustained fatal injuries, and Byung-gu had been doing his best to heal their wounds, but it still wasn't enough to return them to full strength. Of all the members, only Jong-in remained their hope, and their only chance was that his potent flames would be enough to defeat the ants. Jong-in's firepower continued to rage, burning through the ants, but despite this, some of them were still getting dangerously close. Yoonho wondered if this was how it would all end. Suddenly, a shadow rose from the ground, stopping two ants that were closing in on them. Yoonho was shocked and puzzled, wondering who this black soldier was who had come to their aid. The chapter concluded with a close-up of the black soldier's face, with a location in South Korea visible in the background. As it zoomed in further, Jinwoo appeared, standing in the distance. His mouth parted slightly, and with a single, deliberate word, he spoke, "Exchange."